and that it is time that world governments officially acknowledge.
As we approach the millennium, the power of our technology is awesome. But despite our vast ability to solve problems and build complex machines, there are many questions we still cannot answer. Ours is, in fact, a mysterious world, a vast landscape of compelling wonders. He wrote Chariots of the Gods.
Now author Erich Von Däniken guides us through the search for ancient technology, including:
did our ancestors know how to fly thousands of years before the airplane was invented? A dangerous ritual honors the gods, but were these mythic gods or real beings from another world? How did our ancestors build incredible monuments that defy understanding even today? And genetic engineering. Is it possible we are just rediscovering a science observed thousands of years ago?
These and other mysteries in our search for ancient technology, next.
The idea of a primitive culture coming in contact with a more sophisticated culture, whether they are of this world or from another planet, is a very important concept. As history proves, the lower culture always tried to imitate the technology of the higher culture.
One especially impressive example of this phenomenon is the mystery of ancient flight. Is it possible our ancestors experienced air travel thousands of years before the invention of the airplane?
From ancient India to medieval Europe, the dream of flight has fascinated every culture on every continent throughout history. Human beings have gone to extraordinary lengths to conquer the skies. Not until the Wright brothers in 1903 did we finally succeed. Or is this just conventional wisdom? Some researchers now believe there may be clues in our distant past that could cast some doubt on aviation history as we know it.
In the jungles of Colombia, a baffling discovery raises the mysterious question: is it possible ancient cultures experienced real flight hundreds of years ago?
I have some strange objects here found in pre-Columbian tombs, dated about 800 to 600 before Christ. Archaeologists believe that these must be insects.
Perhaps a part of a pre-Inca cult which revered insects. But when closely examined, these figures don't look like insects at all. Insects have their wings on the top of their bodies. Here the wings are on the bottom. So what are these strange figures if they are not insects?
They look like airplanes. The amulets look like airplanes.
Bob Trelease is an expert in the study of early flight.
They have the shape, the physical structure. They have the elements that make an airplane as we recognize it today.
These ancient figures reminded Bob Trelease of a very specific plane.
When I saw the amulet, I immediately associated with the shape of the F-4D. The shape matched it.
The apparent resemblance between the modern combat jet and the ancient icon is striking. But could it just be a coincidence? When Bob Trelease noticed something else peculiar about the golden figures, he began to wonder what the reality was behind this mystery.
The curlicues looked like they could be a engineering representation of turbulent air over the leading edge of the wing.
Were our ancestors experimenting with real flights, or perhaps were they expressing some kind of mythology? Could it be both? One possible answer comes from anthropological discoveries made in the 20th century.
When one culture with a simple technology comes into contact with a second culture with a more complex technology, people often turn to religion.
Anthropologist Dr. Lamont Lindstrom offers one explanation for the existence of these figurines. It may be found in the anthropological concept known as cargo cult.
Cargo cult is a South Pacific example of a kind of religious movement that's happened almost every place in the world.
Life in the South Pacific prior to World War II was pre-industrial in its simplicity. There was no electricity. There were no roads and no radio. No contact with the outside world. Overnight, World War II brought amazing treasures from distant worlds to these remote islands. Airplanes descended from the sky and opened their doors. Out flowed a deluge of military equipment and technology, which the islanders had never seen before. To them, the radio was a wonder, a magical machine able to speak in many voices.
So people who had lived a very simple life for generations over a very short period of time experienced an incredible amount of new technology that just poured across the shore and came into their lives.
And then when the war ended, the cargo suddenly disappeared. Desperate to find some way to bring the cargo back, the islanders turned to prayer and religious ritual.
Much of the ritual of cargo cult attempts to try to attract the return of whoever controls the cargo. They did things like, in many islands, cut airstrips in the forest, in the jungles, hoping that the planes would land again. They built model planes. Sometimes these are small models, sometimes almost life-size models, and put these planes on the airfield as a kind of imitation, some device that will encourage the cargo planes to land.
Using the cargo cult theory, were these gold artifacts created by ancient Indians modeled after mysterious aircraft from long ago? One way to examine this mystery was to see if the amulets were aerodynamically sound and might have been able to fly. Captain Peter Belding, a pilot and air traffic controller, built exact scale models of these icons out of molded plastic. Although it is unknown whether the amulets might represent powered aircraft or gliders, Captain Belding made them self-propelling. He attached a small prop motor to one, and in the other, he placed a turboprop engine. Now Captain Belding tests the more powerful turboprop model. The sight of these models in the sky raises intriguing questions about the icons on which they are based. The idea that they were copied from a working airplane in existence 800 years before the birth of Christ is very difficult to believe.
Could these tiny gold figurines be models of airplanes built by ancient people? Of course, but there is another possibility. I believe they are religious artifacts which were designed to honor extraterrestrial flying machines and lure these visitors back down to Earth. Here again, we have a case of so-called cargo cults, imitation cults. Pre-Columbian people saw something flying up there, so it had to do with the gods. They made these models, they covered them with gold, and today
we found out they really do fly.
If this were the only clue suggesting flight in the ancient world, it would be easy to ignore the whole idea as pure fantasy. But elsewhere in South America, there are more intriguing clues about the mystery of ancient flying machines. The small town of Samaipata in central Bolivia seems frozen in history, an untouched oasis from a simpler time. Penetrating this remote wilderness requires a long, difficult journey, even with modern transportation. Here the mountains hide a centuries-old mystery that could relate to the possibility of flight in ancient times. Silent and alone, a strange mountain called El Fuerte juts into the sky.
El Fuerte, the Spanish word for fortress. A fortress cut out of the rock by pre-Inca tribes? Perhaps. A sanctuary? Most likely. But if it was a fortress or a sanctuary, why don't we find in all of South America a comparable place?
Experts are baffled by El Fuerte. Its design does not suggest to scholars any traditional military or religious function. And although experts estimate that El Fuerte predates the arrival of the Inca people in this region, around 1400, its age is uncertain. The most distinctive feature of El Fuerte is a pair of parallel grooves about 100 feet long, which have been etched into the rock. They run from the bottom of the bare face all the way to the top.
Let's look closer at these strange grooves. Obviously, they point to the sky. To me, it looks like a launching ramp with which they catapulted some flying objects towards heaven. Flying objects which they had observed being used by their gods.
To achieve flight, all aircraft must travel fast enough during takeoff for the wings to generate lift. Where space for takeoff is limited, such as the deck of an aircraft carrier, a catapult must be used. This steam-powered launcher is so powerful, it can accelerate a 65,000-pound jet to a speed of 150 miles per hour in only 300 feet. On the top of the mountain, a circular structure with rectangular and triangular notches has been carved into the rock.
This could have been the installation on which a rope made of rubber was wound around. Rubber was known to pre-Inca tribes long time ago. The tight rope was attached to the flying object below. Then the anchors were knocked away and the object took off into the sky.
Could El Fuerte really be a primitive launching pad? Or is this possibly another example of imitative behavior on the part of ancient people?
I believe our ancestors watched the gods descend in carriages which looked like planes. People were awed of these flying machines and worshipped them. This led into a cargo cult, meaning to imitate these flying machines with primitive earthly technology.
For 300 years, from 900 to 1200 AD, Tula was the capital of the Toltec Empire. Located an hour north of what is now Mexico City, this ancient metropolis was the hub of the great Toltec trading network. Stretching from the American Southwest,
to Costa Rica. At its peak, Tula was a densely packed city